Jasmine on the doorframe. The night the jasmine showed up on our doorframe, I told myself it was nothing. A ghost of perfume, a crescent of color where her shoulder must have brushed the paint as she came in, just a mood the house decided to wear. Lena isn't a jasmine woman. She's cedar and citrus and the kind of clean that makes you think of ironed linen. But there it was, sweet and humid like a garden breathing under a dress. "Book club ran late," she said, dropping a tote of hardcovers I should have recognized. "Nora insists we argue out loud so the waiter doesn't fall asleep." She kissed me with laughter on her breath and a lipstick I couldn't place. Not a shade from the cup on her vanity. Something glossier, impolite. I went with impolite thoughts to match and let her pass, fingers drifting across the small of her back the way muscle memory prefers. She arched like a cat pretending not to purr. We didn't make love. We were a conversation paused in the middle of a sentence, full of heat and grammar we both remembered. Later, she showered and came to bed in my t-shirt, and a silence that pretended to be exhaustion. I lay awake, counting the spaces between the 3 small lies she'd told without noticing. The book club meets Wednesdays. Nora moved to Denver, and Lena has never once argued to keep a waiter awake. There are nights you decide to believe the person you love because it's the quickest way to keep loving them. This was almost one of those. The earring appeared 2 days later, a teardrop of green glass cradled in a little cage of gold wire, slept into the rug by the front door like it had lost its nerve at the last second. Not Lena's. Too soft. Too romantic. I put it on the counter beside the fruit bowl and went for a run that turned into a sprint. When I came back, the earring was gone and the bowl was full of clementines she hadn't bought in months. The house was tidy, the air smelled like lemon, and Lena was humming in the shower. I watched the closed door like it was a theater and didn't applaud. I found the receipt a week after that, the paper folded in the pocket of her trench like a confession trying to learn origami. The lantern, it read, Thursday, 11:58 p.m. 2 martinis, olives like green punctuation. 1 plate, figs and blue. 1 note, next time I'll bring the scarf. The tip was generous and signed only with an initial I didn't recognize. The last line at the bottom was a small printed dare. Rooftop bar, no reservation required, dress code loud. The lantern. I asked that evening, slicing limes as if the citrus had personally wronged me. "It's a bookstore," she said too quickly. "Well, it has a bar. Nora told me about a reading." "Why?" "Because our doorframe smells like jasmine," I said, smiling like a man telling a joke that planned to bite. "And I haven't been upstairs in a while." She looked at my hands, at the knife, at the limes as if they were the answer to a question she hadn't asked. "Let's not fight," she said, and set the table with care, placing the forks as if precision could make a marriage behave. We ate. We didn't say the lantern again. On Thursday, I told her I had late calls and sent her off with a kiss that thought about teeth and didn't use them. When the lock clicked behind her, I breathed out the truth of my decision. I wasn't the kind of man who followed. I was a man who arrived where he was invited and left before dessert just to be interesting. But love revises you. I put on a shirt I knew she liked and walked into the night looking for an address that knew my name. The lantern is a rumor with a sign. You get to it through a narrow bookshop that pretends to sell first editions, and then up a flight of stairs that makes your thighs remember you once climbed hills for fun. At the top, a hostess with a metallic smile asks for a secret, and you say the obvious thing. "I'm here to find the page with my name on it." She laughed and let me through because the room wants believers. The rooftop was all warm cables of light and people who look good in reflection. Music unfurled from a corner like a ribbon untying itself. Steady, understated, a voice that belonged to a singer who knew how not to compete with the city. A breeze checked the hem of my shirt and decided it would do. I found a spot at the rail where the skyline stares back like a mirror and ordered a drink that arrived looking like something you confess over. The bartender was a woman with hair like midnight that decided to stay and eyes that practiced the art of asking without making you hide. Her name tag said Nova, all caps, as if someone wanted to be sure. "First time," she said, sliding the glass in front of me with her forearm grazing mine for exactly as long as it takes to remember your own skin. "Looks like I've been here before and just forgot," I said. "Most people say that," she said. "They come to remember the version of themselves they're braver in." "Does it work?" "Every Thursday," she said, "and sometimes once." She went to charm money out of a bachelor party disguised as tasteful, and I listened for Lena in the thrum. I found her before she found me, not because I'm a detective, but because the body you love is a frequency you never stop tuning for. She stood at a table under a string of bulbs that made shadows look honest. Hair up the way she does it when she wants to look like she didn't try. Dress black in the language that doesn't have to explain itself. She had the earrings twin in one ear, and the bare lobe in the other looked suddenly obscene. He was with her. The initial from the receipt had lengthened into a man. He was a little older than me, or just more practiced, with the sort of jaw you hire for a watch ad and a laugh that wanted to be taken outside. His hand hovered near her waist and didn't land. The hover told me more than a touch. I should have left. Instead, I did what men do when they've decided dignity can wait. I walked toward the music, let the singer's voice wrap a polite ribbon around the bruise I was growing, and chose a table where I could be seen if being seen would matter. It did. Lena's eyes found mine like a searchlight. A film could have ended there, with a cut to her face breaking and a slow run across the floor. Real life prefers the vivid complicity of three people pretending to be porcelain. She didn't come. Not yet. She looked away and said something that made the man turn. He saw me, measured me with the lazy interest of a person who thinks he is a better story than your pain, and smiled like he was doing customer service. If we were going to duel, the weapon would have been politeness. Nova reappeared with a dish for me I hadn't ordered. Dark chocolate broken into squares, strawberries sliced thin enough to be understood by candlelight. "On the house," she said. "You look like a person who should be eating something sweet while he decides which part of the night he wants to keep." "What did I do to earn this mercy?" I asked. "You tipped like you know I have a life beyond this bar," she said. "And you're watching the wrong table the right way." "What's the right way?" "Like you could forgive her if she asked you in the language you both forgot," she said. "I've seen it, the way you're breathing." The singer, her name was Neela, the sign said, slid from the microphone, lowered herself into the crook of a cello's shadow, and began a song that sounded like stepping into warm water after a storm. A couple took the suggestion and moved onto the small cleared space in front. Slow, close, polite enough to pass YouTube and charged enough to make grown people nostalgic for risks they never took. Nova nodded toward the floor without taking her eyes off me. "Dance with me," she said. "I'm married," I said. "I'm a bartender," she said, smiling. "This is choreography, not a proposition. It will make you visible to the right ghost." We stepped into the soft square of room like conspirators. Her palm on my shoulder was the temperature of truth. My hand found the midpoint of her back and behaved. It was interest without purchase, a sketch in breadth and reliable distance. She smelled like lime and something warm, the opposite of jasmine, and I exhaled into the shape the music made for us. It didn't fix anything. It made the floor stop tilting. We turned and I saw Lena again. She was watching with the look she reserves for old movies, the way a person honors the glamour and forgives the costumes. Our eyes fastened. The other man said something into her ear that had the right vowels for mischief, and she removed his hand with 2 fingers as if returning a delicate object to its shelf. Then she excused herself and walked toward us with composure she must have rented by the hour. Nova released me with a good luck squeeze and slipped back to the bar the way professional women know how to leave men, without making anyone look abandoned. Lena arrived where I stood and inhaled like the word hello had too many parts. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I think it's called remembering," I said. "But if you need a menu label, I came to the Lantern for the figs." "That's not fair." "Neither is Jasmine," I said, and we were quiet. Up close, she had the kind of beauty that unbuttons when you stop expecting it to be formal. The earring caught the light and held it. For a second, I wished we were strangers so I could earn her instead of keep her. We both looked at the small square of floor where Nova and I had danced, and then at the man I didn't know, who had the decency to be very interested in his phone. "Who is he?" I asked, and kept my voice in the range that allows forgiveness later. "A client," she said, then immediately rolled her eyes at herself. "God, listen to me. Adrian, he runs a fund and thinks that means his calendar is the weather. He came on too strong. I liked being looked at. Then I didn't." "Is that our new tradition?" I asked. "We like things and then we do." "I'm trying to tell you the line," she said. "I didn't cross it. I stood on it so long my feet went numb and I hated myself for the pins and needles." I believed her, which felt like treason against the careful anger I'd dressed for the evening. She half smiled at my confusion and saved me from covering it with a joke. "Dance with me," she said. "I don't dance," I said, reflex older than honesty. "You just did," she said, and took my hand like the past owed her interest. We moved into the patient space Neela's voice kept sweeping clean. Lena stepped in close enough to repurpose the air between us. The outline of her hip found the inside of my hand, and I thought about a dozen Tuesdays when we almost had this courage. She whispered, "You smell like lime," and I whispered, "You smell like a bookstore that serves trouble," and a laugh fell from both of us that let the night be less sharp. "Why Jasmine?" I asked into her hair, because men are clumsy and direct at all the wrong times. "Because Nora, who is in Denver because I'm a coward, sent me a sample in the mail. She said it would make me feel awake. I put it on because Adrian invited me to power, and I wanted to know whether I could be the kind of woman who takes it without owing anyone. And I want a different kind of power," she said. "The kind where I don't have to explain the person I become at 11:58 p.m. We turned. She fit herself along me the way memory does when it decides to be benevolent, every contour suddenly obvious, every detail permission instead of proof. No one watching would have filed a complaint. A kid could have scrolled past us and seen nothing but 2 grown-ups acting like gravity was optional. But the heat was there, banked and articulate, the kind of warmth that sneaks into the back of your neck and teaches your shoulders to relax. "I miss us," she said, soft enough to be mistaken for music. "And I hate the person who almost traded us for applause." "Applause sounds good until the room empties," I said. "Then it's just hands you don't get to hold." "Hold me then," she said, "before I write another bad chapter in my head." I did. We moved through a song and a rebound and the sort of reconciliation that doesn't look like a headline. It wasn't a miracle. It was 2 bodies choosing to agree, publicly, to prioritize their private language. It felt like moist heat under a greenhouse roof, like the first 20 minutes of rain after a dry month, everything drinking without saying thank you because gratitude takes time to phrase. When we sat, Nova delivered water and smirked as if she'd won a bet with herself. All set, she said to Lena, friendly but not fawning. For now, Lena said. Thank you for lending him a floor. Return policy on the floor is strict, Nova said. You break it, you have to dance on it again. We smiled in the way that makes strangers think marriages are inventions. Adrian opted for a strategic exit, ghosting us with the kind of discretion that suggests practice. I didn't watch him leave. I watched Lena watch me. That seemed like the better sport. We walked home through a city that had decided to be warm at night. On the stoop, she stopped and put her palms on the doorframe, pressing her hands where the jasmine had been like she was blessing the wood for future honesty. Do you still want to be married to me? She asked, simple as a glass of water. Yes, I said, but not to this version where we leave hints for each other like we're bored thieves. If you need to be desired by a room, let's go to rooms together. If you need to be dangerous with me. That sounds like an invitation, she said, and her mouth curved in the direction I fell in love with. What does it look like? It looks like late nights in the kitchen where we don't perform tired. It looks like rooftop bars where we're the scandal people don't get to narrate. It looks like me telling you when I'm jealous before the emotion learns to lie. It looks like you telling me you're lonely before loneliness gets a wardrobe. She breathed like someone stepping out of a tight dress. Okay, she said. Okay. We went inside. We didn't make love. YouTube would have needed to cut to city lights and violin. We did something better for us. We undressed the day from each other gently and lay there as if silence were a quilt we both fit under. Her foot found my shin. Her fingers drew maps on my forearm the way cartographers do when they're tired of being precise. Laughter happened somewhere between her shoulder and my mouth. Doors stayed closed for once because the scene didn't need them. In the morning, I wiped the doorframe with a clean cloth. The jasmine lifted into the air and then stepped away. I set the green earring on the counter. Lena picked it up and said, I bought these for myself because I wanted to be someone who wore green late at night. Turns out I want to be someone who wears them to breakfast. Then breakfast, I said. We ate toast with honey and used our hands because plates felt too performative. Our phones stayed face down. The world didn't end. It turned out the end of the world is mostly an indoor hobby. Later at my office, a text arrived from an unknown number. You learned on the quick, it read. If Thursdays start to itch again, bring her. The floor likes the two of you. N. I stared out the window until glass became sky and sky became possibility. People cheat for 1,000 reasons, and maybe tonight, somewhere up on a roof, someone will. Our story will get told whether or not we tell it. But I'd rather be the man who shows up at 11:58 p.m. with his wife's hand in his, who presses her into a slow turn under a cheap constellation of bulbs, who learns new choreography before the doorframe remembers another perfume. I still walk past the lantern sometimes, on errands that don't need me. I look up at the little row of light and think about Nova and Neela and Adrian fatting into other people's lives. Then I come home and find the doorframe clean, the kitchen pretending not to be a stage, and a woman in green earrings reading a novel at the table. She looks up when I enter. She smiles in cedar and citrus, and a quiet promise I get to keep every time I choose to.